Aloha, young filmmakers and storytellers. Welcome to my mini lesson podcast for action movies, storytelling through action, which is on my YouTube channel at youtube.com/the Salawag. Please check out my latest episode. I'm doing an episode this week on the Dark Knight trilogy where I'm talking about how does action define the major villains of the Dark Knight trilogy. I'm sorry, Cillian Murphy, I did not bring up Scarecrow. I think he's pretty self-explanatory. But that's my latest episode. Go check it out. Normally, my mini lessons have something to do with the episode that I'm talking about, and without question, this one does. But I wanted to get, again, a little bit more practical, like my last episode where I'm talking about stunts. I think the purpose of this mini lesson is to be supplemental. So I want to address something that I know was a big deal when I was coming up and in film school. And a lot of screenwriting and directing, a lot of people would talk about, should you write a villain or an antagonist? And so that is the lesson of today. Is it better to write a villain or an antagonist? That's what today's mini lesson's about. So first of all, look, my episode about The Dark Knight, it's all about the villains, right? But Screenwriting 101 / I would say also for you directors too, it's important to have this in your mind. Well, what's the difference between a villain and an antagonist? A villain, pretty outwardly, is the bad guy. They're doing terrible things. They know they're a bad guy, and on the surface, a lot of screenwriting teachers and people will make you feel like that's a one-dimensional thing, and I think that's the dimensions of that are entirely up to you. But on the other side, you have antagonists, which is you have someone, and an antagonist is simply a word for a person that you are in opposition with. That is all it means. It does not actually mean that an antagonist is a better character to write than a villain. This was I believe, a misconception taught to a lot of my fellow students. And to me, like I said, before even going to Academy of Art University, where I had fantastic teachers, I don't recall my teachers bringing the subject up quite so much. But it was something that I would watch and learn from on DVD commentaries, or from Guillermo del Toro. He has a book called Cabinet of Curiosities, which I highly recommend, where he discusses how he approaches villains, and he's not afraid to use the word villain. And in the case of The Dark Knight, okay, so just for you Screenwriting 101 people, let's really look at The Dark Knight and examine who are the antagonists and who are the villains. In The Dark Knight, in particular, the villain is without question Joker, right? Joker is the bad guy. He's the villain. He's there to cause chaos, and he knows he's causing chaos, and he's doing it on purpose. And so already you see a lot of the famous writer-directors like Sylvester Stallone, other filmmakers of action movies, discuss action movies as morality plays, which is the whole purpose of the story, is to teach young people the difference between good and evil, what it really looks like, how you should approach being good, what being good actually looks like. There's a lot of value to a morality play, and thus hence an action movie. But in this case, I think The Dark Knight's a perfect example where Joker is a villain. And then you get Two-Face, who is, when he's Harvey Dent, technically he's an antagonist. He's not he's one of the heroes. The Dark Knight is all about Batman, District Attorney Harvey Dent, and Commissioner Gordon, before he's the commissioner, when he's still a lieutenant detective. It's about the three of them teaming up to fight crime, where essentially Batman has been working with Gordon for what seems like 6 months to a year now, and they've been putting away a lot of criminals. But now it's down to the big push, where the district attorney Harvey Dent is saying, "Hey, I need to be involved if we're going to successfully keep these people away." And so, but throughout a thread in this movie, which I already talk about the threads of the movie in the podcast, but the thread, the running thread in this movie that turns Harvey Dent from hero to villain is that early on in the story, he tells Commissioner Gordon, a specific detective who is someone he's investigating for crimes going on. And essentially, that detective is Detective Ramirez, who she's the one who had taken Rachel to the warehouse where Rachel dies later on in that movie. And it's that harrowing sequence where the Joker gives Batman a choice. He can save Harvey Dent or he can save Rachel, and he gives Batman the opposite instructions for where they are. So, in this case, Commissioner Gordon and Harvey Dent specifically are at odds with each other because multiple times throughout the movie, Harvey Dent tells Commissioner Gordon, "You have cops that I'm investigating that need to be out of your team." And there's a particular situation early on in the movie where after they've teamed up, or actually I think it's before they teamed up, where the cops are moving on all the banks that are run by the mob, and the money's already been taken out. And what was left behind, the only money left behind, was lightly irradiated bills provided by Batman, meaning that was how they were tracking the mob's money. So essentially, again, Harvey Dent warned him, like, these things are happening because you have bad people in your team. But Commissioner Gordon's response to him every single time is, if I didn't work with corrupt cops, I would be working by myself. Because as established in Batman Begins, if you were not a corrupt cop, you were a dead cop. And the only reason Jim Gordon was allowed to live was because even though he never took from anybody, he definitely turned a blind eye every time his partner would rip off a vendor or take money from somebody he shouldn't be taking money from. So, if you see each movie really informs the following movie in the Dark Knight trilogy. But I think it's important to understand that essentially, even though technically Harvey Dent is a hero for the first half of the movie, he has an antagonistic relationship with Jim Gordon. So even though they're both heroes, in a technical sense, Harvey Dent is the antagonist, or technically he's maybe more of a foil, but he's definitely the antagonist to Jim Gordon, because they are the two butting heads throughout the entire movie. Jim Gordon saying, I have to do what I have to do to solve crimes and clean up my city. And Harvey Dent's the one saying, yeah, but you have to do it the right way with the right people. That's why all your plans keep getting foiled. So they have an antagonistic relationship throughout the entire movie, which once Rachel Dawes dies, that's the moment everything turns. Because I already discussed this in my episode, but all the seeds of Harvey Dent becoming a villain are planted throughout the movie. I'm not going to go over them again here. You have to watch the podcast for me to reiterate all that. But the moment when, after being saved by Batman and Harvey Dent, he does have his face half burned off. The moment Harvey Dent wakes up in the hospital and he has bandages all over his face and he sees that coin, the coin he gave to Rachel before both of them ended up in the warehouses with drums of fuel. It's that moment where he flips the coin. One side of the coin is clean, meaning he thinks Rachel's safe, and he flips the coin and sees it's all charred, and he realizes Rachel didn't make it. That's the point where he rips off the bandages. And notice the bandages, they would be white, but they are white. Throughout the whole movie, he's been called Gotham's White Knight. It's the moment when he finds the charred half of the coin and he realizes Rachel's dead that he rips off that bandage and becomes a villain. But he was a villain who started out as an antagonistic hero. So just Screenwriting 101, is it better to write villains or heroes? It's all about the story you're trying to tell and how and where you're trying to get your character. Because Harvey Dent starts off as sort of an antagonistic hero and becomes a villain. So something to think about for you people out there writing new stories.